September 8th meeting of the OpenJS standards team. Robin, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. We were talking about on our agenda the fact that we have not had a very robust agenda for the past two working group sessions. So I think the question that we all need to address is, do we simply cancel that? Do we use this time to develop some topical sessions for TPAC or TC39? Or do we plan a working session brainstorm, perhaps like our own little collab summit at the end of the month, for example, to build out some more robust programs?
I pasted into the chat a link to the TPAC group meetings, so you can read more about that. You shouldn't need a login or anything to have a look at it. This doesn't include breakouts. I do think like this is a perfectly appropriate time to discuss breakouts. Thanks for bringing that up, Jory. Last time when in the last session, one of the things that came up, well, a couple of things that came up. One was that all the specs nowadays, especially things that begin in the Web Incubator community group, they're encouraged to, where possible, create a polyfill that makes it easier for developers to be engaged. They can get the proposal and try it and maybe accomplish real things with it, and then tell us why it doesn't work or how it could be better, or that it doesn't meet their needs at all, or that it's perfect. But what happens is that's really spotty. It kind of goes all over the place, and then at some point it also becomes unmaintained, and there's no host for them to help them into perpetuity and everything. So one of the ideas there was that OpenJS could potentially fill a role there by making it easy for those kinds of things to enter our sphere, I guess. And maybe to work something out with W3C to put a slot in right in the draft specifications for linking up to the polyfill. We never really did anything with that, but I think that is actually really interesting.
I mean, so for language polyfills, at least, there was a period of time where MDN was planning on removing all of the janky inline polyfill code that they have all over the place and pointing to NPM packages, of which for almost every JS language polyfill, there's two primary authors. I'm one of them, and MDN usually tries to link to those. That sort of work. I mean, I assume that's not going to happen now that there's not teams focused on MDN, but that was only really, I think, feasible because there were non-zero cohesive mini ecosystems for those polyfills. There's more than one, so that the resource wasn't blessing one of them, it wasn't giving an unfair advantage to one author, let's say. And there actually isn't a plethora of random polyfills floating around. People don't tend to build them when they already exist in one of those two ecosystems. I don't think there's the same sort of cohesion around browser polyfills. And so I think that it will be interesting to think about what the differing effects will be. And I think that in particular, the foundation needs to be careful that it's not blessing individual authors as much as it can avoid that.
So the proposal here was that they do a lot of things in WICG do create a reference implementation polyfill, and they do link that up in their README and all that kind of stuff.
But in practice, are those usable in production? Because they don't, my experience with those things is that they don't support older browsers and older engines, and they don't like really want contributions. It's just kind of like, look, I tried it in latest Chrome and it worked, as an example, or like latest Safari or Firefox or whatever. It's like not meant for people to depend on it.
No, I think it depends. So I worked on both inert and focus visible, and those polyfills did try to support a really good array of browsers, and like they were used on like some significant web properties in production. So that, you know, that was the goal, is to improve the feedback loop, right? Like that's the whole idea. So we did actually, we were able, because of that, we were able to iterate pretty substantially quickly. But, you know, now it's a good point, actually, that now, like, how long are we going to invest into maintaining that? And like, where does it live? Does it stay in a WICG repo forever? Is anybody looking at it to make sure it doesn't bit rot or something? Yeah, so I think that's it. And there are a lot of things that are labeled polyfills, and I understand there's like a lot of nuance here and everything. I think that would be some of the things that we need to work out. This actually, I thought, would be a big issue for W3C, like if there was a slot for a reference implementation polyfill, but actually Wendy Seltzer from W3C said she thought it was totally fine. So I don't know. I think it's worth following up on, and maybe, I don't know, maybe that is part of the topic of a breakout. I don't know. I would like to hear from Jory. She was also there. And
yeah, I think I think what I remember most from that conversation was that a lot of people felt that there was a there, right? And that while there was some open discussion and I won't say confusion, but just sort of like more conversations and discovery that would need to happen. Generally speaking, there was a great deal of positivity about the idea of some of those types of things finding a home or finding a place to be worked on at the OpenJS Foundation. And that's, and whether that's something that we do directly or whether that's something that we help support and foster, you know, outside of the foundation umbrella was, you know, to Jordan's point about not wanting to look like we favor any particular author. That was another sort of question TBD, but yeah, that's my recollection and my positive feeling about it.
yeah.
So I think. Oh, go ahead, Donovan. No.
I was just going to ask if we need to open an issue around this topic. I didn't see anything there, so if it's something we're going to continue to discuss,
Yeah, I can open an issue on. I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, plus one to that. I think maybe also getting back to Miles and Robin's sort of maybe kind of up-level concern slash point, which is this is a case where it might behoove us to have been more like planful, to have, you know, this discussion either on the agenda in advance or to maybe table further deeper discussion on it until more of our members are present. You know, I think we do walk an interesting fine line between being an open source community working group, right, and inside and chartered by the CPC, we can largely have a lot of conversations without too much, you know, concern, but at the same time, we are talking about participating in standards work, which is certainly a space where we want to be mindful of our antitrust policies as well as any policies of the organizations that we're kind of participating in. So it is a bit of a point where we probably do need to get more practice better meeting hygiene, shall we say, just to avoid the perception of impropriety. I think, not that there's certainly not been any, but just it helps everybody else see more clearly what we're doing and all that kind of thing. So plus one to that. So I would be in strong favor of us putting that agenda item on our, and that, to be more specific, Brian Cardell's agenda item of the breakout sessions for TPAC on the agenda for next time. And I think that the other thing that was suggested as a use of this meeting's time was the conversation about TC39 next week, which I'm not sure if we have much kind of pre-prepared to discuss, but I would love for Miles to chip in with anything super pressing or kind of what you were thinking about for discussion, Miles.
I don't think that there's anything super pressing, and I think that, like, in lieu of projects making explicit asks for us to discuss the agenda, again, kind of falling back on this group being here primarily for administrative needs, I don't think at this exact time there's too much to discuss regarding that. On an unrelated note, unless, before I completely tangent, was there anything else that you wanted to bring up for that, Jory?
I suppose the only other thing I'm thinking is what we want to tee up for after TC39 to make any projects apprised of, you know, news and actions following the meeting. Or if we should remind, for example, Gus and Nick and others who participate, and Richard is on the call. Yeah, hey, Richard, to kind of help us get the news out about anything that may be noteworthy to
Is
the
there
project.
Very much agreed on that. In an ideal world, what we would be sending out after the, before the meeting, but after the agenda deadline, is a summary of what's going to be discussed, and then follow up the meeting with the results of those discussions. So that's kind of like perpetually on my list, but I have yet to actually fulfill it for any of the recent meetings.
I guess one thing that we would want to be cognizant of, and just because we're a slightly different organization compared to most organizations who attend, is that there is like there's a date at which the notes become publicly available. It would be good to know, I guess, and maybe Jordan as an editor, you could bring in a second opinion, and me as a chair, I could opine on this as well. But should we be sharing that more broadly within the projects prior to the public publishing of the notes? Because there tends to be, you know, an interest in kind of like not making those too publicly available. I'm not sure what the appropriate thing to do there would be.
I mean, the intention of that is that nobody who wasn't in the meeting is supposed to see them until everybody who's in the meeting has a chance to make sure that their words are being fairly represented. So I feel like it would probably not, like, giving an extra up to an extra 10 days of advanced reading of the notes wouldn't help that much, but it might like cause an issue if somebody's words are not correctly represented and that gets out.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that. Just if we were to share anything before the notes were finalized, it would strictly be the decisions, you know, which kind of
Yeah, I guess
lead those anyway. You know, this
Yeah, and I guess
proposal
that's not-
advanced, this proposal did not advance, kind of thing.
That's kind of similar to the notes that I believe the Babel project already publishes, if I recall.
Yeah, the
Oh, cool.
Babel keeps a tracking issue, and like whoever's a delegate that's also in the Babel project tends to update that as advancements happen, or indeed as they don't happen. And then I usually update the proposals repo throughout the meeting as advancements do happen. So, you know, people can see those things. It's more the reasons why they happened or didn't happen is something that tends to need filtering prior to that, the notes being published.
And maybe
I think that's
actually
perfect then.
maybe the Babel issue is something delegates from OpenJS could collaborate on, and then we could just share that instead of duplicating the work.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I tend to like tag comment on that as well throughout the meeting. So we can just share that, like make a standards repo issue that links to the Babel issue, you know, and that seems like it would work just fine.
Nice.
So seems like a good enough time as any to introduce my tangent. The OSI is doing a seminar on the state of open source. This will be taking place, I believe, on Thursday and Friday. I'm just trying to grab the agenda so I can share it with all of you. So it's September 9th to the 11th. So it actually, I guess, starts tomorrow. I'm going to drop a link into the chat. I believe that there's open registration if folks want to get involved. They are doing, as part of the agenda, a call with affiliates from around the world. And as our affiliate from OpenJS, I've been invited to participate, and that will be taking place Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And I'm pretty sure, I think, yeah, there's a tweet about it. I'm just finding right now, which I should probably retweet, saying I'm so excited to be participating. But just wanted to raise that so everyone was aware of it. I believe that there's open registration if people want to get involved. Lots of interesting talks going on about open source, and maybe things to get involved in there and discussions to participate in.
Thank you for sharing. I've been meaning to see when this was and everything. I'm glad I didn't miss it. Thank you. Are there any, I guess you'll know more after the keynote call, but the affiliate call, any news or updates from OSI to share?
To be honest, aside from the welcome email that I received and one call that we had to participate in, like a survey, this is the first kind of like larger thing that we've been asked to participate in. So not a ton at the moment, but hopefully after this call, I'll maybe have a bit more of an update. And if I'll go ahead and kind of open an issue to talk about with a summary of what happened on this in this session. And if there's anything that's, seems pertinent for discussion, I'll tag it appropriately so it can end up on the next agenda.
All right. So
Since there's a lull, oh, go ahead.
no, you've got it.
Since there's a lull and everybody was being quiet, I forgot to mention, I'll drop another link in. WICG has changed. They're not really getting rid of the discourse that they had, but they're creating a new way to do proposals. I dropped a link in there. It's maybe interesting to people. I feel like I should send an update in general because it's been a while since I've done that, but that's definitely one thing that might be interesting to various projects.
So I have a follow-up question to that. If it might be interesting to various projects, have we find a way to communicate what's going on to the member projects? Like, is there a mailing list or something like that? How do you make these announcements?
So we do have a projects list. It's projects at lists.openjsf.org. It's entirely opt-in, and so between that and then our CPC list, that generally gets good coverage of those who are active and all that. But we're always excited to have new people sign up for the projects list. Particularly, that's free for anybody. So.
This is actually like Dory sends those nice news you can use emails.
Yeah, sign up to get an email from me basically every week. LOL.
They're awesome. I feel bad that I'm not producing them as much as I should myself. So kudos to you.
Definitely don't feel bad. And then also the other thing that we can do is if there's something from this group that we really want to promote, and between Rachel Romoff and Robin and obviously the other list that we have, I think we can pretty well reach everybody fairly easily. So it's just knowing what we have and when we want to get it out. That's kind of the thing.
One of the questions I've received as early as this morning from somebody who I was on a call with who is a student, but a pretty active contributor, and others say, hey, I'm pretty active in open source, but standards seem pretty interesting to me. How do I get involved in TC39? So do they start participating in our standards working group? Is there another way? So I think there's an opportunity for us to bring folks along as well, either a new generation or a pipeline of folks. Or maybe that should be our role. Maybe ECMA and the W3C have that. I don't know.
Can you explain the person's background one more time, Robin?
Well, I've been doing, I think I mentioned this morning, I've been doing calls with folks who are interested in the foundation from a membership level. But if you look at broadly how to get involved in the foundation, the CPC is obviously a great entry point in addition to our events. But this person has a couple of projects, has contributed to ESLint, for example, and wanted to know how they could get involved in the standards setting process. He said that he felt that the language is really moving forward. Again, this is somewhat of a new contributor, but not entirely new. It's been probably contributing the last 3 years.
And do they work for like a larger organization? Or are they an independent?
Independent student, full-time student.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's like the exact kind of person that we want to create like inroads and like abilities to support. And I think that this is the exact type of thing where like, I think we talked before about maybe trying to create a little bit more process for like, I want to make a proposal, or like having those meetings where we're discussing the agendas. I would imagine those would be places. Michael Dawson is definitely working on those, like, kind of, I'm trying to remember the name of it. We have so many programs going on, but it's like the community groups, I think they're called.
Collaboration spaces.
Collaboration spaces.
Yeah.
So what I would imagine is, like, this is somewhere where, like, perhaps there's a standards or a TC39 collaboration space. And I'm not volunteering anyone right now, but I would imagine Richard or Gus or folks who are involved representing would be like the folks who would maybe make sense to participate there. But it's also something that I may be able to help with, you know, obviously depending on time. I think that it is, at least to me, when we started talking about this stuff, creating those inroads was definitely a goal. I think COVID and kind of the changing of our work world has kind of stunted some of that development, because it was, a lot of it was focused on how do we just get people there in person, and now it's like, oh wait, that's not a thing. But I think that some of the missing infrastructure, structure and process that we have right now is kind of the gap of, you know, where someone could go from being like, right now we have infrastructure in place for, hey, I'm someone who's been at this committee for 10 years and like would love to help out, or I'm someone who already knows how to do this and I'm doing this thing. But we don't have a lot to kind of mentor people who are like, I'm interested in this space and want to get involved.
Agreed. Yeah. Unless you work for a large organization, maybe perhaps with some standards, you know, with the standards team, it is hard probably to learn. So.
It's an interesting challenge. So I did this this outreach thing to get more developers involved and get feedback even. That was Chapters, it was called. And like some of the challenges there, just time, right? Like not just the person organizing it, but like how do you manage time as somebody who doesn't do that? It gets challenging. But it's interesting. I hope we're able to put together something good.
Yeah. It's like being a mentor for an intern does take time, right?
Being an intern takes time is the point that I was making.
Both.
Yeah. Being a mentor is like, it takes kind of less time than it does the intern.
Yeah.
It's a big commitment to really dig in.
Yeah, I think information sharing that we talked about earlier, I think is a nice bridge, at least for the time being, so they can have a window of what's going on. Cool.
I think, you know, like one step we can take, which I think is generally helpful to our community and others, is sort of organizing information a bit, because to the students' point, there's a lot of confusion, and it's hard to discover the place to start and where the paths are, and where, for example, you know, one group, one committee might function a little bit differently than a committee in a different organization. And so, you know, I think one thing that would be a benefit would just be to maybe create a place where, hey, you know, here's where, if you're interested in getting to know more about, you know, how to get involved in the W3C, here's a couple of places you can start reading. And our recommendation is, for example, to, you know, have a project or have a area of interest, you know, that might help guide your discovery.
So would you imagine that that is like writing something original, or that is like curating a set of good materials that exists on different things.
Definitely think it should be more of a curation of
Yeah.
things versus writing something ourselves.
We could publish a page on our website with that curation. We could create a blog around it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That sounds like an interesting thing that we could maybe do a call that's not this call to sort of brainstorm the sorts of questions we would like to look for good answers to.
Mhm.
We could even, I guess, do that asynchronously somehow. But I think a conversation would be good. But
Yeah, I think that those community spaces are honestly going to be one of the best places for us to really, like as a foundation, not us as a group, um, to focus more on mentorship and collaboration, unless we want to kind of revisit the charter of this group to expand its scope.
okay, so I think we started our call today kind of hoping not to have too much of a meander. We had a bit of a meander. That's what we do. We're very good at it. World's best, I would say, actually. So I want to kind of wrap us up before we spend too much more on that, with actually more of a clear game plan for next time. So we can start getting a bit more organized for the future. So our next meeting in 2 weeks, we've added as a couple of agenda topics, one being the discussion of TPAC developer breakout session. And Brian Cardell is going to open an issue on our GitHub repo for that. The other thing that we should wrap for next time is any I'll call it aftercare of the TC39 meeting, and particularly, how we can maybe just further advance and share some of the notes that come out of the Babel project and that kind of thing. And then we have this other topic that we just identified, which is curation of a set of getting started resources for community members who want to kind of start getting looped in. Those are the three kind of actionable spaces that I noted. Did I miss anything, y'all?
Just an update on OSI from Miles.
For Miles, yeah, I just thought, yeah, update if any from Miles and on OSI, and of course.
And then the WICG proposals, yeah.
All right, I would like to, before we hop off the call, take a volunteer for next week to ensure our agenda is made correctly with these issues. Would anybody like to volunteer for that?
Yeah, I'll take that, Troy.
Donovan is the best.
It looks like the agenda was made this time. It just it only has one issue on it. I don't see anything that didn't really work with it, but I'll make sure that it works next time as well.
I think that would be awesome, and to ensure that the items that we just chatted about today are added. So we make an agenda that has an agenda, and that will help.
Okay.
Thank you, Donovan. I super appreciate that. Any other business before we meander away from each other from the Zoom call? Okay, cool. I will say we're donezo with our official meeting, and appreciate everybody for making time, and especially the day after a holiday here in the US, where I know a lot of people are busy and stuff. So we can close out the YouTubes, which I can't do right now. So Miles will have to do it.